Who is patient number 9?
Me, I suppose. The last 4 years have been sheer hell for me. I've been in such a bad health way.
He is the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal, the madman who has defied every odd to stand as rock's ultimate survivor. For over 5 decades, Ozzy Osbourne has cast an indomitable presence over the music world, enthralling fans with his groundbreaking work in Black Sabbath, his trailblazing solo career, and a personal life marked by dizzying highs and shattering lows. But at age 75, Ozzy now faces his most daunting challenge yet. Debilitated by Parkinson's disease, spinal injuries, and a lifetime of hard living, the once invincible rocker finds himself in the fight of his life. Yet as he has so many times before, Ozzy is determined to rise again, to keep making the music that has been his lifeline and reason for being. Because beyond the iconic songs, the concerts, the fame, and the antics, Ozzy Osbourne's legacy may just be one thing: survival. This is his story. Early life and challenges. John Michael Ozzy Osbourne entered the world on December 3, 1948 in the industrial slum of Aston, Birmingham. The fourth of 6 children born to a family crammed in a 2-bedroom house, he knew hardship from an early age. "I lived in a very poor house," Ozzy recalled. "We never had any money. The house was falling to pieces. It was freezing cold. Toilet was in the backyard. It was survival of the fittest." School offered no respite for the undiagnosed dyslexic. Ozzy was relentlessly tormented for his learning difficulties and working-class roots. "I suffered abuse from other kids," he shared. "They'd take the piss out of the way I spoke. I was a target." The constant bullying shattered his self-esteem and led him to act out. At 11, feeling despondent, Ozzy attempted suicide. By 15, he dropped out entirely. Aimless and angry, the teenager spiraled into petty crime and substance abuse. He floated between dead-end jobs, spending any earnings on alcohol. Stints in prison only amplified his sense of worthlessness. Music was his only light in the darkness. Ozzy found hope in the burgeoning rock scene, dreaming of fronting his own band. But as the 1960s waned, that notion seemed a far-fetched fantasy for the troubled kid from Aston. Until fate intervened in the form of a local band seeking a singer in 1968. Ozzy's old schoolmate Tony Iommi was forming a new heavy blues project and invited him to audition. The pieces clicked into place. Joined by bassist Geezer Butler and drummer Bill Ward, they named themselves Earth, later Black Sabbath. And in those smoke-filled jam sessions, Ozzy felt his hazy vision solidifying. For the lost 20-year-old, there was no turning back. His destiny beckoned. Rise to fame with Black Sabbath. From the thunderous opening tritone of their self-titled 1970 debut, Black Sabbath sounded like nothing before. Iommi's monolithic riffs, Butler's ominous lyrics, Ward's leaden drums, and Ozzy's sinister croon combined into a style darker and heavier than any of their peers. This was more than just hard rock. This was heavy metal in embryo. And the band's charismatic, unhinged frontman quickly became its undisputed manimal mascot. Sabbath's sophomore album Paranoid, released just months later, catapulted them to superstardom. Powered by the iconic title track, The Punishing War Pigs and Iron Man, it reached #1 in the UK and #12 in the US, eventually selling over 4 million copies. Though critics scoffed at their downer rock, Sabbath defined the sound of 70s metal with landmarks like Master of Reality, Vol. 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage. But as Sabbath scaled the mountaintop, Ozzy tumbled into the abyss. The band's punishing schedule and sudden fame fueled already prodigious substance habits. As the success grew, so did the excess, Ozzy admitted. Alcohol and drugs were the norm. His antics grew more unhinged, like the time he wore Sharon's dress to a record company meeting, urinated in an executive's wine, and was chased out by guards. By the decade's end, Ozzy was in freefall, his addictions threatening to destroy all Sabbath had built. The band dynamic deteriorated, with Iommi and Butler isolating the frontman. It all boiled over during 1978's Never Say Die tour. The final straw came when Ozzy missed half the band's shows, strung out somewhere in a drunken haze. After a decade as metal gods, Sabbath finally declared, "Ozzy is no longer with us," in 1979. The Prince of Darkness was out of his own band. Successful solo career. Unmoored and depressed, Ozzy continued his downward spiral, locking himself in an LA hotel for months with only drugs and alcohol for company. "I thought I was going to lose my mind," he said of the period, but the woman who would save his life had other plans. Sharon Arden had worked as Sabbath's manager and saw Ozzy's untapped potential. She offered to help relaunch his career as a solo artist. More importantly, Sharon gave him an anchor, a pillar of support to cling to. Thus began a personal and professional partnership that endures to this day. Ozzy initially doubted his prospects without Sabbath, but Sharon paired him with fiery virtuoso guitarist Randy Rhoads, whose alchemy helped the singer rediscover his swagger. Backed by a crack band including bassist Bob Daisley and drummer Lee Kerslake, Ozzy unleashed his first solo salvos, Blizzard of Oz in 1980 and Diary of a Madman in 1981. The albums were a revelation, proof that the newly solo Ozzy was a force to be reckoned with. Fueled by Rhoads' revolutionary neoclassical fretwork and the singer's show-stopping wail, Blizzard and Diary spawned instant classics like Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, and Over the Mountain. The records were multi-platinum monsters, re-establishing Ozzy as a metal superstar for the new decade. Tragically, just as his star ascended again, Ozzy was brought low by the devastating death of Rhoads in a March 1982 plane crash. "I lost a great friend as well as a great bandmate," a shattered Osbourne said, but with Sharon's steadying guidance he soldiered on, recruiting Jake E. Lee for the successful Bark at the Moon in 1983. Now fully back on his metal throne, Ozzy indulged his most outrageous impulses. His debaucherous antics became as infamous as his music, snorting ants with motley crew, biting the heads off doves and a bat, drunkenly urinating on the Alamo, each new exploit sharpening his Prince of Darkness mystique. And as he made more hit albums with the likes of guitarist Zakk Wylde, Ozzy cemented his status as heavy metal's eternal madman jester. Personal demons and challenges. But behind the scenes, the singer's offstage life was in shambles. His substance abuse spiraled to frightening new lows. "I should have been dead 1,000 times, Ozzy said of his intake. His 11-year marriage to Thelma Riley crumbled due to neglect and infidelity, and his mercurial temperament created chaos for his new love, Sharon and band. In 1984, one of Ozzy's hotel room benders grew so out of control, he was arrested for attempting to strangle Sharon to death. The terrifying incident served as a rude awakening. It was a real shock, a real wake-up call, Ozzy admitted. With Sharon's help, he entered the Betty Ford Center for rehabilitation. But sobriety was a slippery beast. Ozzy would go on to wage a 3-decade war with his addictions, ricocheting between stretches of clarity and relapses into old self-destructive patterns. Music remained a saving constant through the turmoil. As the 80s gave way to the 90s, Ozzy scored the biggest hit of his career with the moody ballad "Mama, I'm Coming Home" off his acclaimed No More Tears album. The song, a soulful ode to Sharon's steadfast devotion, marked a new vulnerability. While relapses still came, Ozzy rebounded more readily with an established support system. By 1996, he was clean again, releasing the strong Osmosis. Marriage to Sharon and fatherhood with 3 children, Amy, Kelly, and Jack, brought newfound stability and purpose. His annual Ozfest festival, launched that year, gave him an enduring platform. After a quarter-century roller coaster, Ozzy was in a good place. Reality TV rebirth and re-emergence. As the new millennium dawned, Ozzy pulled off one of the most surprising third acts in rock history. The Osbournes, an MTV reality show chronicling his oddball domestic life, became a runaway smash in 2002. It made Ozzy an icon to a whole new generation who only knew him as the eccentric, doddering dad always shouting, "Sharon!" The show encapsulated a new Ozzy, still entertainingly erratic but cleaned up and cuddly. Critics hailed the reformed Osbourne's self-deprecating charm. Suddenly, the satanic scourge of the 80s moral majority set, was guest starring on network sitcoms and yucking it up with President George W. Bush. Ozzy may have still looked the part of metal menace, but he was now a beloved household name and bona fide TV star. Musically, he did some image rehab as well, returning to his roots with a reunited Black Sabbath. The blockbuster tours and live album Buried Bad Blood, reaffirming their chemistry. Back on the solo front, albums like 2001's Down to Earth, 2007's Black Rain, and 2010's Scream saw Ozzy settling into his role as metal's lovable uncle, still capable of radio hits and concert draws well into his 60s. The new stability let Ozzy begin reckoning with his legacy. He published a best-selling autobiography, I Am Ozzy, in 2009. The next year, Ozzy had his entire genome sequenced by scientists, hoping to unlock the secrets to his surprising longevity and resilience. The singer also reconnected with his once-estranged children. "I haven't always been a great father," Ozzy admitted, "but I'm making up for lost time now." Health battles and resilience. But just as he found peace, Ozzy's body began breaking down after a lifetime of hard living. In 2003, a quad bike accident at his UK estate nearly killed him, leaving him with permanent nerve damage, neck problems, and chronic pain. "I'm lucky to be alive," he said afterwards. "I could have died or been paralyzed." More scares followed. Ozzy was diagnosed with a genetic predisposition for Parkinson's in the mid-2000s. In early 2019, complications from flu put him in intensive care. Later that year, a traumatic late-night fall severely aggravated existing neck and spine injuries. "I went slam, on my face," Ozzy recounted. The injuries required extensive surgery and derailed Ozzy's ongoing No More Tours 2 Inches farewell trek. Then in January 2020, the singer revealed his most devastating diagnosis, Parkinson's disease. "I'm no good with secrets," an emotional Ozzy shared on Good Morning America, flanked by Sharon and children Kelly and Jack. "I cannot walk around with it anymore. It's like I'm running out of excuses." He described the nerve pain shooting through his body. "I got a numbness down this arm and my legs are going cold. I don't know if it's the Parkinson's or what." The disclosure cast Ozzy's already dwindling performances in a stark new light. His triumphant November 2019 performance at the American Music Awards, where Post Malone and Travis Scott joined him for a surging "Take What You Want," was bittersweet. It would end up being Ozzy's final live appearance to date. More health scares followed: a staph infection, major neck surgery, a Parkinson's-triggered fall, another bout of pneumonia. Ozzy bravely mounted a comeback with his 12th solo album Ordinary Man in February 2020. Recorded with Post Malone producer Andrew Watt, it was a late career triumph, his highest charting effort in years. He followed it with another strong album, Patient Number 9, in 2022, featuring an all-star cast including Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Tony Iommi. But the album release was overshadowed by Ozzy's announcement that, at 74, he was no longer physically capable of touring. "Never would I have imagined that my touring days would have ended this way," he wrote in a poignant statement. Still determined to perform, he held out hope for one-off shows. But privately, Ozzy had to accept a stark truth, that after 50 years, his live career was likely over. Ozzy's spirit. Ozzy Osbourne has packed a dozen lifetimes of triumph and turbulence into his 75 years. He's a man who has been to the brink and back more times than seems possible, staring down childhood abuse, crippling addictions, stunning betrayals, shattering losses. A man who has made every mistake in the book, yet always found the strength to turn the page and begin again. Ozzy is the living embodiment of Winston Churchill's famous adage, "If you're going through hell, keep going." Because that's just what Ozzy has done for 50 years as heavy metal's hell-raising survivor-in-chief. He transfigured the pain of his early years into the demonic howls and dark prophecies of Black Sabbath, alchemizing trauma into transcendence. He staggered through the wilderness of addiction for decades, losing his band, his mind, very nearly his life. But with Sharon's love and music as his North Star, he willed himself back from the abyss to improbably reign again. Now beset by ailments that would bring a lesser man to his knees, ravaged spine, short-circuiting nerves, the creeping siege of Parkinson's, Ozzy continues to roar his defiance. "I'm like a cockroach," he chuckles. "You can't get rid of me that easily." Friends like Sir Elton John and Post Malone marvel at his fighting spirit. Daughter Kelly calls him Iron Man unironically. "Dad has the power to just keep going," she says reverently. Because that's Ozzy's true superpower, beyond his banshee wail, beyond his talent for mayhem and madness. His mutant ability is resilience, an almost superhuman capacity for survival. It's a quality forged in the crucible of hardship back in Aston, honed razor-sharp through myriad battles with his demons. Ozzy Osbourne doesn't just endure adversity, he devours it, metabolizing the Sturm und Drang into ferocious anthems and feral performances. The more he's beaten down, the more unbreakable he becomes. And that astonishing tenacity has never shone brighter than now, as Ozzy faces his ultimate reckoning. With his body failing but his passion undimmed, he's determined to conjure more musical magic even as the curtain threatens to fall. "It's what gets me up in the mornings, and it's what I'm most proud of in my life," Ozzy says of his art. "I ain't ready for the dirt bath yet, not by a fucking long shot." There's a bittersweet poignancy to watching this improbable survivor, still clad in black, crucifix dangling, mount his last stand. Because in a sense, Ozzy is battling for us all, raging against the dying of the light on behalf of a generation. If the inextinguishable spirit of rock and roll made flesh can will himself to create amidst a crucible of pain, what excuse do we mortals have? Ozzy's life is a testament to the power of never surrendering. So let others remember Ozzy Osbourne for his musical milestones and outrageous exploits, his pivotal role forging a new genre, his imprint on pop culture. Let them hail him as the voice of metal, the clown prince of darkness. Ozzy will accept those laurels humbly. But if you ask this forever blue-collar bloke from Birmingham how he hopes to be remembered, he'll tell you straight, as a survivor. Because more than the album sales and awards, more than the shock value antics and iconic imagery, Ozzy's most enduring legacy just might be that undying spark, that feral drive to keep on keeping on. Through unthinkable trials and obstacles, armed only with a rebel yell and the love of his family, he's kept the flame of rock's founding spirit burning. He's shown us that a working-class kid with more will than skill can change the world through sheer bloody-mindedness. As he stares down his toughest battle yet, Ozzy is unflinching. "This Parkinson's is a fucker of a thing to get. But I'm not done. I've still got a lot left in the tank," he vows, flashing that iconoclast grin. "To be Ozzy Osbourne, it's a big gift. People love me, and I love them. I ain't going nowhere." Half a century since he began his improbable ascent from the Aston slum to the metal pantheon, the Prince of Darkness remains gloriously unvanquished. He's flipped off fate too many times to bow now. The madman of rock has morphed into something far more potent, the patron saint of hard-won persistence, heavy metal's high priest of hanging on. Ozzy Osbourne, now and forever, is rock and roll's resolute heart, embodying its purest virtues, resilience, rebirth, and the stubborn refusal to die. Long may he reign. Conclusion. Today, at age 75, Ozzy Osbourne has lived many lifetimes in one. The boy from the Birmingham slum who used music to escape a dead-end fate. The madcap Black Sabbath frontman who defined heavy metal and embodied its most outlandish excesses. The embattled addict and husband who nearly lost it all to drugs and drink. The improbable reality TV superstar who found redemption in mainstream love. And finally, the resilient icon soldiering on through debilitating illness to keep sharing his gift. But through all the seasons of his life and seismic turns of fate, one constant has propelled Ozzy forward. An almost superhuman drive to survive. Staring down abuse, addiction, accidents, and now the twin specters of Parkinson's and spinal damage, Ozzy has willed himself to carry on through sheer bloody-mindedness. As he recently mused, "If you'd said to me years ago, 'How long do you think you'll last?' I would have said, 'I'll be dead by 40. Luck has shadowed me all the way.' Yet luck is too simplistic an explanation. Because Ozzy's life is a testament to rock and roll's power as a redemptive, life-saving force. First, the music gave a misfit kid a dream to chase. Later, his career gave Ozzy a reason to combat his demons, and now, in his twilight, it remains the animating passion that keeps him fighting for more tomorrows. "You've got to have something to make you want to get out of bed," he explained. "Mine happens to be that I love making music." Of course, Ozzy is clear-eyed that he's in the final chapter now. The Prince of Darkness knows the sun is setting on his improbable reign, but he'll be damned if he'll go quietly. "I ain't done yet," Ozzy defiantly declared after his Parkinson's reveal. "I ain't gonna stop until they put me in a box." Even now, he continues willing himself into the studio to make new music against all odds. Because for Ozzy Osbourne, the ultimate rock survivalist, that's all he knows. So while the future remains uncertain, one thing is clear. Ozzy's legacy is assured. Not just as one of heavy metal's founding fathers, its definitive voice and greatest character, though he is certainly all those things. No, Ozzy Osbourne will endure as rock and roll's indomitable spirit incarnate, the lad from Aston who stared into the void so many times yet always screamed back, the madman, the survivor, the legend, now and forever.